Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's 6:01 p.m. and let's go ahead and start with the board meeting. I'm going to go ahead and start by calling roll. If I could have those present start from my right to my left.
Carlos Margo, present.
Anita Chavez, present.
Alisa Peña, present.
Rosalba Hernandez, present.
Celso Gomez Jr., present.
Great. We have quorum. Everyone's here with the exception of one of our board members who's out today. Jessica will not be joining us today. Ochoa. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able to do so, please stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 4. It's public comment. As reminded or as a reminder, you do have 3 minutes if you have signed up for public comment tonight. At the end of 3 minutes, our Vice President will inform you that your time is up. And as we call your name, please state your name and make your way to the podium. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Yes, we do. If we can have Ms. Amy Leal make your way to the podium, please.
My name is Amy Leal, and I'm here tonight as a parent of Flores Elementary and an advocate for our community. This is not the first time I have stood before you. In fact, this is the 5th time I have addressed this board on behalf of the students, teachers, and families of Flores Elementary. And yet, time and time again, our concerns have been ignored. I am here to express the overwhelming disappointment, frustration, and anger of the community that feels betrayed. The decision to discuss and consider the termination of Mr. Leroy Garcia, a principal who has exemplified what it means to be a leader, is both unjustified and harmful. Under Mr. Garcia's leadership, Flores Elementary has thrived. My children, like so many others, have benefited from his unwavering commitment to fostering an environment where every student feels valued. Teachers have found a leader who supports them, and parents have found an ally who listens and cares. Mr. Garcia has set a standard of excellence that reflects the best of La Joya ISD, yet this board is actively undermining that legacy. The harm caused by this decision goes far beyond Mr. Garcia. It is eroding the trust that families like mine have placed in this district. Parents are withdrawing their children from La Joya ISD because they no longer believe their voices are being heard or that their children's best interests are being prioritized. What makes the situation even more painful is the lack of transparency and communication. Parents, myself included, have tried repeatedly to meet with Dr. Sorensen to express our concerns only to be ignored. When the community who entrusts their children to this district cannot get a response, it is not just a failure of leadership, it is a betrayal of the fundamental principles of accountability and partnership. This board and superintendent's repeated refusal to listen to the community is unacceptable. The decisions being made here are destabilizing our schools, demoralizing our teachers, and driving families away from La Joya ISD. How can you expect parents to trust this district when their concerns are being dismissed and their leaders are removed with clear justification? Mr. Garcia's proposed termination is the final straw for many of us. He has earned our trust, respect, and unwavering support through his years of dedicated service. His leadership has made Flores Elementary a place of hope, success, and unity. Removing him will not only harm the students and staff who rely on him, it will send a clear message that this board and superintendent does not value its community or the future of its schools. This is my 5th time addressing you, and today I come with a petition with 420 signatures that is more than schools have in enrollment in this district. That is mere portion of the number of parents that value the leadership of Mr. Leroy Garcia. It is time for this board to show that it values transparency, fairness, and the voices of the families it serves. We urge you that Mr. Garcia be allowed to continue the incredible work he has done at Flores Elementary. We urge you to please, please, please bring him back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, do we have any others?
We do not have any more public comments.
Okay, if we don't have any others providing public comment, that ends that portion of our agenda item. Next agenda item is agenda item number 5, Superintendent's updates and announcement. Dr. Sorensen?
Thank you very much, President Alvarez. I'd like to ask a couple people to come to the podium. Dr. Little, Annette Lozano. Board, I'd like to introduce you to Annette Lozano. This is the first time she will be presenting. She's very excited. Can't you tell? She's very excited. She is our Executive Director of K-12 Humanities, and you've also met Mr. Sebastian Duque, the Director of Assessment and Accountability. So we're very excited to bring to you our MAP reading fluency data from beginning of the year. Dr. Little?
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Good evening, board and community. Really excited to start our conversation tonight around how our students are doing with learning how to read. We've shared with you our beginning of year MAP data in reading and math earlier this year. Promised to come back to you with a specific look at how kindergarten to second grade students are doing on their reading journey, and that's what tonight's presentation is really about. There is going to be part of this that is sort of unpacking what it takes to become a reader, because we want to be super clear about the complexity of that work and what goes into it, and then we're obviously going to share with you the data from our beginning of year assessment. We've ordered these presentations tonight specifically. We wanted to give this context around MAP reading fluency before doing our next conversation around Lone Star governance and the goal progress measures, because this is one of the goal progress measures that we are proposing to set for our third grade reading goal. So Ms. Lozano is going to kick us off and really walk through what reading fluency is, how the assessment relates to that, and then we'll get into sharing the data, and you'll have Mr. Duque back to help with part of that.
Welcome, Ms. Lozano.
Thank you. So before we jump into the data of K2 fluency, we need to understand why is it that reading fluency matters. So reading fluency is important because it is the critical bridge between learning to read and reading to learn, right? We need to have students be able to recognize words and understand their meaning in order to build that comprehension that students need. So in order to be fluent in reading, we need to ensure that the foundational skills are built. What do these foundational skills include? They range from decoding, phonological awareness, phonics, language comprehension. So therefore, not having these building blocks that are important to reading and comprehension, it's going to make it challenging for our students to achieve success at grade level. There are 3 components to consider when thinking about fluency. We have reading words correctly. This is accuracy. We also have the ability to be able to read words without having to stop to think about them. This is automaticity. And we also have reading with expression, intonation, emotion. This is prosody. These 3 components make up fluency. So before us, we do have the tool that we selected as a district to assess the progress for our K-2 students in fluency and their journey along reading. So the K-2 fluency for MAP is going to be assessing and measuring students' development in decoding, language comprehension, fluency, accuracy, and comprehension. So reading fluency is a little complicated. As you can see here on this organizational chart, we broke it down into foundational skills, which are the absolute most important building blocks to building that fluency that lead to our oral reading fluency. We have decoding. Decoding starts with phonological awareness, which is leaning into the sounds that our letters make, rhyming, alliteration, omission, substitution of these sounds, just sounds. Then we also have phonics and word recognition. This is when we make the connection between the sounds and the print to start building the words for reading. Then, at the same time though, we also need language comprehension, listening comprehension, and picture vocabulary, ensuring that our language and oral comprehension is developed for our students. Once these foundational skills are fully developed, then we can go into the progression of oral reading fluency, which includes sentence fluency, leading to our oral reading rates. So now here is our district data for K2. Our assessment was able to measure students' progress on foundational skills and oral reading. We have kinder through second grade, both in English and in Spanish. Our blue graphs are our oral reading rates. As you can see, it's supposed to progressively improve from kinder to second. And our foundational skills as well is in the red bar graph from kinder to second. Don't be alarmed that in kinder, we don't have a very high percentage of oral reading because this is at the beginning of the year, and this is going to progress as we move through their journey for reading. However, we need to ensure that those foundational skills in kinder are really solid so that we can move into the oral reading rates. We can see our first graders, there are some students who have oral reading rates and foundational skills are strong. And then we look at our second grade data, where we see that there is a high need of strengthening our Tier 1 foundational skill instruction for literacy. So as we can see here, about half of our population in second grade have developed foundational skills and oral reading rates. So in the next few slides, we're going to go ahead and break down the data by grade level and by language. This first slide that you see here, this is the student data for a cohort of our kinder English students. We can see that few students are fully developed in language comprehension. What you see on the left side for decoding, we have our two subcomponents, phonological awareness, having the ability to manipulate those units of sounds. We have about 25% of our student population in kinder English, whom are either at the meets or above level. So we have work to do for decoding. However, on our phonics word recognition, majority of our students are already at the meets or master's level. When we look at language comprehension is broken down into listening comprehension, which is the ability to be able to select a picture when a word is given to the students orally, no text attached to it, right? We can see that half of them are developed. And then we also have picture vocabulary, where students are given pictures, and again, they have to identify the correct picture with the sentence that's given orally to them, right? No written text, just oral, because we're trying to ensure that their oral language comprehension is fully developed. The next slide, we look at our cohort of kinder Spanish students. Here we can see in the decoding side that our kinder Spanish students, their phonological awareness is at the exceeds level for the majority of the population. We look at the phonics word recognition. Remember, that is the sound to symbol connection where the students are actually starting to read, that the majority of our students are already at the meets level or exceeds. However, language comprehension, we still need work. We still need to develop their oral listening comprehension and their picture vocabulary. Mr. Duque will continue with the rest of the grade levels.
Thank you. Mr. Duque?
Good evening. As we move on to first grade, we want to recognize that a lot of our first graders, in the context of this slide, are doing a fantastic job of decoding. And they're gradually gaining ground in that language comprehension. So for the context of these slides, as we progress throughout the school year, we want to see more blue and green versus the reds, yellows, and grays that are going to be within the slides. Because as we progress from BOY to MOY to EOY, we're strengthening that decoding that's occurring in the classroom, and we're also continuing to strengthen that language comprehension in the classroom. So as we progress and we come back with you with new data sets at MOY and EOY, you should see the slide going to the right. You want to see more blues and greens, less reds, yellows, and grays. Our first grade English, all students who actually were able to achieve the oral reading assessment showed very strong foundational skills. And because of those strong foundational skills, we're able to engage with the sentence reading fluency. So we had quite a bit of our students actually engage with that sentence reading fluency. So 89 out of the 725 students that actually took this test in English were able to engage with sentence reading fluency. Out of those 89, a very strong percentage of our kids showed that they were already achieving oral reading. So the components are decoding, language comprehension, sentence reading fluency, and then oral reading. First grade Spanish, again, we see strong decoding and phonological awareness and phonics word recognition. There's still a lot of work to be done to ensure that we're providing students with those structures and supports to ensure that they're actually able to gain ground in the decoding. But as we move to language comprehension, you see that we actually, none of our first grade students that tested in Spanish actually achieved the exceeds level in the language comprehension. Again, this is BOY data, and this is the work that's currently happening in the classroom. So we're strengthening that skill, and we're hoping to move kids and move that needle. Our first grade Spanish results demonstrate that, again, we had a lot of our students in the second grade classroom, or the first grade Spanish classroom, achieve that Spanish reading fluency, and 77 of those actual students actually moved on to the oral reading assessment. And again, there's a strong performance out of those few kids that moved on at the exceeds performance level for oral reading fluency. Second grade, this may look alarming, let's not be alarmed, because in our support of our biliteracy program, as a district, we opted to test all students in English. So all of our second grade students took this assessment in English. Students that would normally take the test in Spanish were also provided the same assessment, but in Spanish. So here is a very good snapshot of all of our students testing in English. And again, there is a need for support in the decoding, but again, a lot of our students would have typically taken a Spanish test, but now they actually took an English test here. So don't be alarmed with these percentages, because the context of the next slide, when we look at the Spanish, it'll kind of put it all together, where we're going to see that, yes, the language is struggling, but when they test in their native language, you could see how the decoding is different. So again, here, a strong need for decoding support and language comprehension support. But as we move on, we look at the students, and 445 of our students actually engaged with the sentence reading fluency portion of the assessment. And so when they engage with that portion, we see very strong performance at the meets and exceeds performance level of oral reading. So we had quite a bit of our kids achieve that meets and exceeds performance in the oral reading in second grade. Hope this kind of helps bring down the concern with the previous slide with the all students testing in English. This is our second grade students who assessed in Spanish. And so these students, again, you see a lot of them are at the approaches and meets performance for the decoding. And again, we're going to need some support in the language comprehension, but a good amount of our kids are also performing at the meets and exceeds with language comprehension. Again, our Spanish, our second grade students who tested in Spanish, about 308 of these students engaged with the sentence reading fluency. And out of those kids, we had about roughly, I can't see that number here. I need to come back with a number on this one. But for the most part, our oral reading rates were pretty strong at the meets and exceeds performance for second grade Spanish reading. I'm going to let Ms. Lozano pick up on this slide.
So now that we've seen all this data from kinder to second grade in English and in Spanish, we have to remember that MAP fluency was a tool that we used to measure the progress of our foundational skills. That is directly aligned to the science of reading. As you can see here in the model, we have the simple view of reading. We have a simple multiplication sentence where we're saying that word recognition, which is the ability to transform print to spoken language, multiplied by the level of language comprehension that a student has, will equate to that reading comprehension. So reading comprehension is dependent upon these two subcomponents of our foundational skills. So we need to strengthen both just equally and ensure that they are fully developed in order for our students to have a strong reading comprehension, even when it comes to complex text across curricular areas. So it's really not that simple, because now here we go into another model that shows really, truly how learning to read is complex. Learning to read has many strands, as we can see here through Scarborough's reading rope. Again, we see the two components of foundational skills, language comprehension. So we need to ensure that all these strands are being taught at the early learning grades to ensure that we can strengthen and interwoven these strands together with language comprehension, which is our background knowledge, our vocabulary, our language structures, our verbal reasoning, our literacy knowledge, but at the same time, we need to be teaching word recognition, which is our phonological awareness, which is our decoding, and our sight recognition. Once we start developing and we start tightening the rope, it's so intricate that we are able to develop skilled readers who are able to then perform on grade level, understand complex text, whether it's in science, social studies, math, or reading, or psychology, or economics. So our students need to be fully developed in all these strands of reading in order to be lifelong learners.
Thank you both. Board, that's a lot of data to digest. There's a ton of complexity in teaching students how to read, and you saw a bunch of those building blocks throughout the presentation tonight. A couple of things to call out. We can see that we have significant work to do in developing foundational skills for our students. So each of those parts of that rope, we have to strengthen kindergarten through second grade, regardless of whether it's English or Spanish. In doing so, we're enabling our students to start to be able to read. The MAT Reading Fluency Assessment is designed to follow the journey of reading, so I am moving from foundational skills into the ability to read simple sentences, ultimately to be able to read more complex text, and all of that is a call to action to us in this data. So that is where we are starting this school year. Again, this is the deepest insight La Jolla has ever had into where students are in their reading journey. And each of these points to clear actions that we have to take as an organization to help support our educators in improving these outcomes. This slide just summarizes some of those big things that we are focused on. As Ms. Lozano just said, the first and foremost is making sure that everything we are doing in this district when it comes to literacy is rooted in the science of reading. The evidence there is incredibly strong. We know that's the right way to teach students how to read. So we've got to make sure that that is part of our experience and our instruction every single day in the classroom. That means teachers have to have the right resources to do that with. You've heard us tell that story in other contexts already. That also applies to literacy. So we are starting in January making some curricular adjustments to ensure that our K-2 teachers have the most up-to-date parts of the curriculum to help guide this foundational literacy instruction. That conversation has already kicked off with our principals. There's already been some trainings with our teacher leads, in fact on Saturday, and more will be coming in the next few weeks to make sure that the second half of this school year, we know that we're doing the best we can with the resources available to us for our students. All of that is still leading to a new reading adoption next school year. We've mentioned that to you a couple of times. We will have a new reading curriculum in our district next year that will be even more enhanced with foundational skills in the science of reading. In addition to the material work that we have going on, we're also kicking off a more focused effort with our reading specialists. We've got folks dedicated in our school buildings to help students who need that help the most. And so we are going to work with them over the next few weeks to make sure the spring is as strong as it can be to target students who need the most growth, to do that with the best materials, and then monitor that progress throughout the year to ensure that students are accelerating their journey as much as possible. And then finally, we will be pursuing in the spring a range of professional learning opportunities for all of our stakeholders, rooted in research-based instructional strategies, preparing for the adoption of the new curriculum next year, and making sure that what we're doing every day for the second half of the school year is as best it can be, so we can come back and actually show you significant improvement in our students' ability to read. So that's what we have for you tonight with MAT Reading Fluency and the start of that journey for us in the district.
Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Little, Ms. Lozano, or Mr. Duque regarding the 5.1? Seeing that we have none, Dr. Little, I know you're going to be presenting 5.2, which is the Lone Star Governance Goal Progress Measures, along with Mr. Duque. Ms. Albury?
Dr. Little and President Alvarez and Board, I really do want to stress, though, how important it is. Dr. Little, if you could go back a slide. The first bullet point is incredibly important to me as a superintendent, and just really want to lift this up, is that none of this changes without the systematic and explicit instruction on the foundational skills of reading, based upon the science of reading. And so as a district, our curriculum updates are going to be incredibly important, and our revamp around reading specialists, again, incredibly important. Professional learning, obviously, incredibly important. How we pour into our teachers and support them, and how we pour into our district and campus leaders is incredibly important, because as a district, it is our responsibility to take care of bullets 2, 3, and 4. But what really makes a difference, and I think Dr. Little has said this before when we talked about MAP, and you know, the arrows going up and middle and down. What accelerates growth for children is instruction. What accelerates growth for children is daily, systematic, and explicit instruction on the foundational skills. And so that needs to happen in our pre-K to 2 spaces. And so we've got to continue as a district to take care of bullets 2, 3, and 4, and pour into our educators and pour into our principals so that our teachers, boots on the ground, in the classrooms with kids, can do an excellent job with bullet 1. Because bullet 1 is where the rubber hits the road in terms of changing trajectories for children. As we've talked about our quality seats analysis, we see how if we don't get it right at the front end, what the results look like in middle school and high school, and the promise of college and career readiness. And so I really just want to continue to make the connection back to college and career readiness, because educational excellence is the right of every student in this district, and it starts right here with foundational literacy.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Dr. Little, you may proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sorensen. One thing I'll say as we start to frame this, like you just had an entire presentation that clearly has a ton of complexity behind that work. That represents one of the goal progress measures that you're about to see. So as you see these 12 goal progress measures, keep in mind that each of those has an equal amount of depth and complexity to the day-to-day work that we have to do behind them. We are very excited tonight to continue our conversation related to Lone Star governance. Thank you again for approving the goals last time. Now we're coming back with the next layer, which is how do we make sure that we are actually on the right path to each of those goals? And that's what the goal progress measures help us to do, is to keep track throughout the school year to make sure that we are not surprised when it comes to the end of the school year on how well we did. More importantly than just keeping track, these goal progress measures actually help us adjust our work and support with campus leaders and teachers to make those adjustments within the year that are necessary to actually achieve the best outcomes for our students. We are being super consistent here. Every time we talk to you about data, we are going to continue to come back to how are our students doing on grade level or above. So the goal progress measures you see tonight, just like the goals approved a couple of weeks ago, are focused at the meets or above grade level. There are a couple of places where that type of data point doesn't exist, but we're still giving you the on grade level equivalent for that goal progress measure. Just as a reminder, we are looking at our 4 goals, so we will look at goal progress measures for 3rd grade reading, for 3rd grade math, for 8th grade reading, and for college, career, and military readiness in general. Just like these goals are set at the end of the year, so our measure this year will come when our 3rd grade students, for example, take STAR in the spring. The goal progress measures are also end of year measures, but the benefit of them is we can track them throughout time. So we'll see a beginning of year data point, a middle of year data point, and an end of year data point to see if we've achieved that target. We've unpacked each of those goals with 3 goal progress measures. These are really both within-year indicators, but they're also across-year indicators of our progress. So if we look at the first one, for example, with third grade reading, you'll notice we're looking at students in kinder, first, and second grade. So it's not just a myopic view of how our third graders doing. We want to understand if our whole continuum of supports and services and student outcomes is leading to where we ultimately want to be, which is goal 4, where all of our students have experienced educational excellence and are ready for life after La Jolla ISD. Mr. Duque is going to come walk us through goals 1, 2, and 3, and then Ms. Albury is going to do goal 4. One thing I would ask the board and the community to keep in mind as you see the slides that follow is they will look a little different than the goal slides did. And that is mostly because many of these GPMs do not have prior year data. MAP, for example, including MAP reading fluency, we just started this school year. So not only do we not have data for years past, we only have one data point right now, period, because we've only taken those assessments at the beginning of the year. So we are asking the board, as you consider approving these goal progress measure recommendations tonight, to do those in most cases for 1 year only. Let us actually get enough data to be able to better project future year targets. So you'll notice a difference on most of these slides, and just wanted to name up front sort of why that exists and why we're making this request to look at this year, knowing that we will come back and set future year targets along the way. So Mr. Duque is going to begin with goal 1.
Thank you, Dr. Little. As we look at our data with regards to MAP performance, we're looking at goal progress measure 1.1, which looks at our first grade students' math growth performance. So there is no STAR assessment that's aligned to first grade math. So with MAP, we're using the 50th percentile to say that that's the national average, and that's going to be our on-grade level performance. So we're looking at the percentage of students that actually performed at or above the 50th percentile. Keep in mind that MAP is a norm reference assessment that's administered across the nation, not just across the state of Texas. So students achieving at least a 50th percentile performance have outperformed 49% of their peers in the same grade level across the nation. In this case, we're looking at our first grade math. We have a baseline or a BOY data point of 52% of our students have already scored at or above the 50th percentile at BOY. We're setting an end-of-year target at 55%. That target is anchored based on the closing the gaps domain, which is what's used in state accountability in grades 3 through end of course. What we are working towards currently and over the next couple of days and over the next couple of months till the end of the year is making sure that we work with our kids so that that MOY data point falls somewhere between 52 and 55, which is going to put us really in line with achieving our end-of-year goal of 55%. Again, just reiterating what Dr. Little just said, we have historically never engaged with NWEA MAP. This is our first year. We've only done one administration, so we can't provide historical data. And in order to be able to produce a very good growth target, we need to administer both a BOY and an EOY so we can determine our capabilities as a system as to how much we're able to grow on a year-to-year basis. Goal progress measure 1.2, which is our second grade MAP growth reading. Here we see our second grade students performing, 48% of our second grade students performed at or above the 50th percentile. A little bit more aggressive goal here because we're a little bit lower than the 50%. So we're setting still a target anchored with our closing the gaps domain at 55%. For K2 MAP reading fluency, we focused on one element of K2 MAP reading fluency as our goal. We actually use sentence reading fluency. So 27% of our K2 students were able to engage with that sentence reading fluency. And so if you notice, we're setting a pretty aggressive target at 45% for end of year. Again, at middle of year, our aim is to fall somewhere in between that 27 and 45 to put us in a good position for that end of year assessment. Text Kia represents our kindergarten entry assessment. We do currently have historical data for Text Kia. Our historical data goes back to 2020, 2021, year that we came back from the pandemic. And so we set a baseline of 48% of our kids at end of year were considered kinder ready. And so if you notice, as we progress year to year, in 22-23 and 23-24, we kind of plateaued. And so we stagnated that goal, knowing that we have currently started onboarding a new math curriculum. So we've stagnated that goal for the next 2 years with a target, a long-term target of 80.9% of our kids being kinder ready at the end of pre-K. Goal progress measure 2.2, first grade math, map growth map at 50 percentile above. Similar to our reading assessment, there is no historical data. However, you'll notice that there's a significant difference between our reading performance at the 50th percentile and our math performance. Currently, 36% of our students in first grade are at 50th percentile or above. We've set a really aggressive target of 58%, again, anchored with that closing the gaps domain. But that's the work. That's what we're going to be aiming for, somewhere in the middle between 36 and 58 at MOI. And the work is to get to 58% by end of year. Goal progress measure 2.3, second grade map growth. Again, you'll see that only 29% of our students are at the 50th percentile or above. And a pretty aggressive goal here again at 55%. At MOI, we will come back with that data set to show our progress towards that goal attainment. This next grade level, goal measure 3.1, signifies the first goal that we actually can track and we can compare to our STAR performance, right? So currently, there is a linking study that exists within MAP that links STAR performance in sixth grade math to sixth grade math performance in MAP. So we're able to determine how many of our current year students at BOY are performing at the meets or above performance level. So currently we have 35% of our sixth graders performing at meets plus. Again, we anchored based off of the closing the gaps domain in state accountability at 53%. Pretty ambitious target as well of 18% increase. And again, our MOI data remains unknown because we will be administering that assessment in January, so we'll come back with that data to show progress towards that goal attainment. Seventh grade map growth, same thing, there's a linking study that links that performance. Currently, 40% of our students are at the meets plus performance, the same anchoring of the 53% at meets. And so at MOI, we should be somewhere between the 40 and the 53%. Eighth grade map growth is a really good measure of our goal performance measure for House Bill 3 because currently 53% of our kids are performing at meets plus based off of the MAP linking study. This is going to be a really neat goal to keep an eye on because at the end of year, we'll be able to compare our House Bill 3 goal with our STAR performance in regards to how MAP has helped us achieve that goal. And so we'll be able to correlate our MAP performance to our STAR performance in attainment of our House Bill 3 goal for eighth grade math. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Ms. Tamara Albury.
Hello, good evening. So we're going to talk about our college and career readiness goal, which is goal 4. But there are 3 things I really want to lift up. The first thing is that CCMR data will always be lagging data. And so when we're looking at our slides, we're looking at graduation classes as opposed to accountability years. The second thing relates to our Texas Success Initiative criteria, which there are 3 ways in which you can get that measure, and that's through a TSIA, the SAT, ACT, as well as college prep courses. The third thing relates to the industry-based certifications. Historically, this is where we got our CCMR measure, and so you'll see that because of increased standards, these rates will decrease. For goal 4.1, this relates to college readiness as a whole and TSIA, as I previously stated. So when you look at our rates, you'll notice that we have historically performed below the Texas as well as the region in regards to our performance data. You'll also notice that in contrary to goal 1 through 3, we actually do have historical data. When you're looking at in January 2021, you'll notice that the TSI changed to TSI A2, and so in regards to what was being tested and the criteria to passing that exam had changed, so as a result, our scores also went down. When you're looking at 2024, 2025, those are our current seniors. So as our seniors round into their spring term, there is little time for them to change that data. When we're looking at our associate's degree, something's really important to note is that if our students are not successful on TSIA, then they're not able to get that associate's degree. And so when we're looking at our associate's data, we'll notice that historically, our data, we have performed better than the region as well as the state. Once again, when we're looking at what's required for our students to receive an associate's degree, they're going into the spring of their senior year, and as a result, there is very little time for them to meet that criteria as well. It's highly unlikely, and so the achievement rate that we have is strongly projected. We are looking at ways to support, so in the future that these rates will be higher as it relates to future cohorts and what we can do to improve those rates. As it relates to IBCs, it's something to note that once again, when we're looking at the class of 24, 25, it's the same thing as it relates to that's our senior class. It's something to note that the certifications have sunsetted, and so the certifications that we have historically used to meet this measure are no longer applicable in order for our students to meet this measure. And so as a result, that's why if you'll notice that there's a dip in the score. For goal 4.3, this relates to our freshmen on track. And so before we talk about that, we want to kind of provide the definition of what does it mean, freshmen on track. So that there are three things that comprise this definition. One relates to our students, our freshman class. They need to earn 6 credits out of 8 credits. In addition, they're to fail no more than 1 semester of a core course. So what that means, for example, is for our students, they can fail English in the fall, but they must pass in the spring. If they fail English in the fall and the spring, they are not on track. They're considered not on track. And the third part of our definition refers to our attendance rate of 90% or higher. If students are chronically absent, that means that they're not able to get credit for those courses. So that is why those 3 things comprise our definition. We have joined and partnered with the University of Chicago for our Freshmen on Track work, and it's really important to note here that the work that we're doing has 2 decades of information and research that backs that supporting freshmen in this way really aids in the graduation rate. Students are more likely to graduate from high school if they have this support in place. In addition, students are also more likely, as it relates to college readiness, to enroll in college if they have that support freshman year. So as we look at our goal 4 for our freshmen on track, there's some things to note. So we have historically captured data as it relates to our freshmen. However, what we did was we applied the definition that we're currently using on previous data. You'll note that historically we have had about 50% of our students are on track, and that our goal is that we'll have 3/4 of our students to be on track for graduation. And so once again, when we're looking at our different student groups, from 2019, those are students who were in 9th grade in that school year. And so it's a year-over-year data that we're collecting, and so going forward, we will be using this definition as well.
Thank you. So board, that gives you a sense of the goal progress measures that we are recommending along with this year's target for each of those GPMs. This really lays out that everything we do from pre-K to 12th grade matters in our ability to hit the 4 goals that we set. And so as we continue to provide updates to you on these data points, you and the community will be able to see and hold us accountable for if we are taking care of our responsibilities with our students to ultimately achieve the outcomes that we have set.
Members of the board, do we have any questions for Dr. Little or his staff? in this particular time regarding this portion of his presentation?
No.
I have a question. I don't know if this is the right presentation for it, but you mentioned about attendance, and I know in the high school that we had some issues with high absentee rates. Have we kind of discussed, how we're going to go about ensuring, we get kids in the classroom and bring down that, absentee rate and all that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We are spending a significant amount of time with our campuses focused on attendance and absenteeism. There's a few things I can say that we've done. First, at the high school level, we actually held a bit of a roundtable with each of our high schools to look at their first and second 6 weeks attendance data, get really clear with them on the systems that they need at the campus level to be able to track those students and follow up and provide support. So who is concerned about whether Derek is showing up each day matters, and the school needs to know exactly who is responsible for reaching out to me, reaching out to my family when I'm missing classes, and not to just do that when I get to 5 absences or 10 absences, but to think about that at 1 and 2 and 3 as well. So that's a partnership with Chief Gomez-Perez that we are engaged in, continuing to follow up. The other thing, you approved this partnership last board meeting, but tomorrow we are introducing our work with Everyday Labs as well to our principals. That's really going to kick off in the spring semester, which is a bit of a background support for what we're doing with chronic absenteeism. In no way does it take less of the burden away from us as adults and educators to ensure that we're supporting our students and families, but it's an additive support that our campuses will have to communicate with families about absenteeism. And then we are monitoring this and reporting out on it every week. So each week, schools get a note from me that not only looks at absenteeism, but it looks at other implementation to really call out trends that we're seeing, actions that we need to take so we can better support them in their work. And the board will actually, starting in January, get a monthly report from us looking at chronic absenteeism, both in numbers of students, but also in dollar amounts as well, since that's directly related to our financial picture. So all of that to say, we have a lot of irons in the fire here because it is absolutely critical to our instructional outcomes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Do we have any further questions, particularly on this agenda item? Okay, Dr. Little, you got 5.3. I know it's an update to the systems of great schools, or I should say high school quality seats.
All right. Chief Gomez-Perez and I are going to tag team this one. A couple of things to frame and remind us in the community on before we start. As we shared the quality school analysis with you at the last board meeting, we said we are coming back really soon to dig deeper into high schools. That's what this conversation is about. But it's not just about 2 weeks ago either. As the superintendent came into the district and was going about her listening tour and entry plan, there were clear sort of questions and comments and concerns about the overlap and duplication that exists in our high school space. So going back to last spring, this started to become a focal point of the conversation, so much so that high school started asking the superintendent, what are you going to do about this? Like, what's going to happen leading into the 24-25 school year? And what she and the administration shared is that nothing would happen right now, but we're going to keep studying this and looking at it and examining the data to figure out how we can be best organized as a system of great schools to ensure that we're getting the most excellent outcomes for our students. So tonight's conversation is not a start, it's a continuation of what's been going on for 8+ months in the organization. That'll be helpful as we go through this to remember sort of what's leading us to some of what you're going to hear from us tonight and the recommendation that we make. Wanted to start the conversation, though, just sort of by level setting, and hopefully this slide, through a little bit of infographic, helps, around what the high school journey can look like. As we think about educational excellence and college career readiness at the high school level, what we're hoping to achieve is what's on the bottom of this slide, that every student coming to La Jolla ISD will be a career technical education completer. So they will have multiple courses in CTE, they will get that industry-based credential, and they will use that as a pathway to an associate's degree. So ideally, we have students who graduate with their high school diploma and their college diploma at the same time. That's not the only path, though, as we think about our high school work. Students can really take any or all of those options right now. So you can do what many of us probably traditionally did, where you just take some courses, you don't end up with any credential or other degree, but you get a high school diploma. That's sort of that top, most historical sort of pathway for students. And then as we progress through CTE, there's obviously different levels that we can go through, but just like we just discussed with the goal progress measure, we want students to become what the state calls a completer. So they get the entire pathway complete with the industry-based credential. As we unpack the rest of the presentation, know that our focus is really getting students to and through that associate's degree. So we're going to share some CTE data, but we're mostly going to focus tonight on what are we doing to boost dual credit and associate degree attainment in La Jolla ISD. And Chief Gomez-Perez is going to pick the next part up.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Good evening, everyone. So let's talk about La Jolla ISD and how we're currently duplicating some of the offerings that we have across high school. So when we looked at back in the spring, what are we offering, what are we doing well? And so how can we make sure that all of our students are getting good instruction regardless of where they are attending school? So what we have right now, if you look at the landscape of our schools, we have 3 comprehensive high schools. La Jolla High School has a school within a school, La Jolla Early College. We have the PTIC academies at Juarez Lincoln High School and Palmview High School. We also have our Academy of Health Sciences, and when you look at these specialty schools, Academy of Health Science, Thelma Salinas Early College High School, and Jimmy Carter Early College High School, when they first originated, so the intent of each one of these was very specific. And over the years, what we've been doing is duplicating services, and so some of those things have been replicated not just at the specialty schools, but also at our comprehensive high schools. And so the original intent of what we were meant to be with these specialty schools have kind of become a blur. And so you want to look at the Academy of Health Sciences, and so these were students that were still enrolled at the comprehensive high school, but were coming into the academy to focus on health sciences. And then in there, it became a STEM school. So these were first-generation students. At Thelma Salinas Early College High School, the original intent of that early college high school is for us to graduate students with associate degrees in STEM fields, the science, the engineering, those things within those STEM fields. And so the bulk of what we are doing at Thelma Salinas Early College High School now is interdisciplinary studies. When you look at Jimmy Carter Early College High School, that intent for that particular school, which was the original early college, was looking at making sure that we are servicing students that may or may not have had access at college courses at a regular high school because of the population that they are representing. And so we wanted to make sure that at Jimmy Carter Early College High School, underserved students were being prepared for college courses and and have that support within those college courses. So let me give you a little bit of background of an early college high school. So when you look at the CCRSM model, what is the intent of an early college high school? And so the purpose of these schools was to support students who were least likely to attend college. And so we were going to give them that opportunity to take that first college class and be successful, and so that the students could come in and say, I can do this. I can move forward with all of those academic supports that they're getting, and so they're going to be able to do that. So that is the goal for these students, was to finish their high school diploma and get an associate degree, or up to those 60 college credit hours they could. The blueprints, so it's very specific to our early colleges, and so it's not just about I want to be an early college, but I have to fill out an application if I want to be an early college high school and get designated through the state. And so there are certain benchmarks that I have to make sure that I am doing in order for this campus to be successful. And so we look at benchmarks, the school design, partnerships, target populations, the infrastructure, the student supports that we are giving. And then on top of all the accountability that we have within the state, STAR, EOCs, and CCRSM, and all of that, so early college high school also have to meet their outcome-based measures, our OBMs. And so they need to make sure that they're meeting access. Who are your target populations? And so are we servicing the students that we are designed to be servicing as an early college high school? Achievement. So it's not just about STAR, it's about how many kids are passing TSI. We just talked about our GPMs, and TSI is a big focus for us as a school district, ensuring, because that's part of that achievement. Are they earning those college hours? The 9 hours by the end of sophomore year, the 15 hours by the end of their junior year. And so those are part of that achievement. And then the degree attainment. So how many students do you have that are actually reaching that associate degree, or they are core complete, or they are staying within the early college model? And so just because there's a certain percentage that the early colleges need to meet from 9th grade to 12th grade. And so there is this whole system within the system that an early college needs to be following. So I wanted to share a little bit about that. So as we're looking at what we are doing within the pathways that we have within the district, and so we have, and I'm going to go back to CTE, 89% of our CTE pathways are being the same at every one of our comprehensive high schools. And so you have a list of all those CTE pathways at the 3 comprehensive high schools and how we are duplicating services. Again, this is going to be a continuation of those quality seats within our high schools to see how is it that we can become better at what we're doing. If we keep replicating services, it's one of those things, more doesn't mean better. So we need to focus on what are the things that we need to be really doing for our students, because we need to get really good at some things, not really bad at everything. And so we want to take that focus for them. And so CTE is like this. When we start looking also within the school offerings, and so I'm going to transition to what are we offering for associate degrees? We are replicating services at each one of our schools, and we are not focusing on what we were intended to do as the early college, as the specialty, our academies, our PTEC. So you're looking at all of these degrees that were offered, and so that's putting a strain on our staff, on our budget, on our spaces, and everything, because we're trying to give so many associate degrees, and so in doing such, we may be failing along the way in providing those student supports so that they can be successful at the end. We just looked at, again, at our goal progress measures, and we talked about TSI, we talked about the associate degrees, we talked about the CTE certifications. We need to be intentional, we need to be focused in what we are doing within all of our spaces, and wherever we have really good student supports, replicate those services so that every student, whether it's at an early college or a comprehensive high school, they're able to have those same supports so that they can be academically successful within our high school, but also when they leave us. We don't want them to just graduate, we want them to graduate with power, so which is what we talked about last time with our presentation on the quality seats analysis. So there we go. We have all of these programs, and yet we have widely disparate outcomes within our schools. And so we say we're doing all this, but are really delivering on the promise that we're giving our students whenever we're recruiting our freshman classes. So when we look at our degrees earned and where we are concentrated, so we have 71% of the degrees earned are concentrated in just 1 or 2 of the 10 pathways that we have right now. We look at interdisciplinary studies, and so interdisciplinary studies is the biggest, amount of associate degrees that we have within the school district, and we only, if we look at degree plans and crosswalks, interdisciplinary studies should only be offered at La Jolla Early College and at Jimmy Carter Early College. And so you're looking at all of those numbers where, again, we're spreading and we're falling short on the promise that we're giving our students. So that'll give you the numbers of where we are at with associate degrees. Then you also want to look at when we recruit our freshmen, there's a certain percentage of our student population, and total here is 38% of our students in our high schools is 38%. And of those 38%, we have only 47% of our students actually graduating with an associate degree. You've seen this slide before when we talked about the quality seats analysis. And so you're looking at where are we with our STC success metrics. But I want you to think about this slide in a different format this time around. When you're looking at the success metrics for STC, I want you to think about the benchmarks that an early college or a school needs to have. Benchmark number 5 in those blueprints is all about student supports. And so student supports is our summer bridge programs that we have, the advising, the classroom supports that we're giving, and the college and career preparation that we are giving our students. So if you're looking at all of these things, we're looking at, as an early college, you need to be fulfilling everything for benchmark number 5. We only have Jimmy Carter Early College High School that is actually delivering on benchmark number 5, the student supports. So we're creating inefficiency and incoherence. So when we look at where are we with our associate degrees, so every degree, whether it's a bachelor's degree, an associate degree, we talk about we used to say basics, right? And so now it's the core curriculum. So the first 42 hours of any degree, associate degree or bachelor's, they're going to be the exact same thing. The speech, the English, the math, the US history, the government. And so when you start differentiating in those programs are going to be those very specific electives that you have at the end, the 6 specific electives for that degree. And so that's where we need to differentiate within those associate degrees. We also look at duplication, which is, we talked about staff and the budget as well. When we have the spaces that we have, we're putting a strain on our staff and our budget. And you can see within our specialty schools how much money we're spending just in the administrative and our office staff. So that's spurring the need for clarity, for focus, and for improved outcomes. We want to make sure that what we are doing as a district is going to be the best thing for our students. We want to make sure that those outcomes are beneficial to our students, for our families, and that we're getting them ready for college. So what we are proposing is a consolidation of our high school pathways to one standalone early college high school. And so the three comprehensive high schools. And so the consolidation will create clarity, cohesion, efficiency, and support improved outcomes, which is what we want. That if we have 100 freshmen coming in, we want 100 freshmen to leave the early college and graduate with at least those 60 hours that they need in order for them to be successful in college prep. So when we're looking at our 4 specialty schools, we are recommending or proposing the consolidation into that one early college high school, which is Jimmy Carter Early College High School. We are not looking at making any changes to our comprehensive high schools within the 25-26 school year, but we still need to look at what are those pathways that we are replicating at the school. And so we want to look at those as well as we are looking at those quality seats analysis. So the degree pathways, when we looked at that spreadsheet of what are those associate degrees that we are sharing, that the kids are getting at these specialty schools. So we want to go from 8 pathways to the 3 pathways that make up 84% of what we are currently doing right now within our schools. And so that recommendation is the interdisciplinary studies, whether it's the arts or whether it's the science, where we're still giving the students the opportunity to take those electives within the field that they are wanting to have. The biology, that's going to focus on our health sciences, and then teaching at the elementary or the secondary level.
One other thing to say here, as we think about consolidating these pathways, this is a consolidation at the early college high school. We would still have some of these pathways available at our comprehensive sites. You heard earlier that Juarez Lincoln offers a P-TECH pathway in criminal justice. That would continue. So the criminal justice pathway is still available at the district level at Juarez. Palmview offers a P-TECH pathway in precision manufacturing. That would continue as well. So if students are interested in that, Palmview is a location to participate in that coursework and that opportunity. La Jolla High School right now does not have a P-TECH program or a pathway. That's something we will work to build over the next roughly school year and a half to make sure that they too have a P-TECH that can lead to an associate's degree. So every one of our comprehensive high schools would have a P-TECH associate degree option. And then at the singular early college high school, we would have these 3 high impact pathways as options as well. Through all of this, we want to be incredibly supportive of our students and families through this transition. And so there's a couple things we want to unpack that will help us do that. The first, many students and families are going to say, okay, what does this actually mean for me? If I understand and agree, that's great, but what is it going to mean for my student right now who's sitting in class taking courses for an associate's degree? If you are a current 10th or 11th grader, nothing is going to change other than maybe the building you show up to every day. So if you're that few students who are in the physics pathway, we're still going to offer that to make sure you can complete because you've already started some of that coursework. So even if you're in one of those pathways that we may not offer in the future at the early college, you still have the next 2 years to get that done as a current sophomore and junior. If you're a current 9th grader, you haven't started taking any of those specialty courses yet. In fact, you may not have taken a dual credit course at all at this point in your journey. So if you're choosing to stay at the early college, Jimmy Carter, you would choose between one of those 3 high impact pathways. And same thing for the students we'll be recruiting for next year. They're sitting in middle school as 8th graders right now. They haven't started anything. These will be the choices and the supports that we provide to them. So biggest takeaway is that if you're at La Jolla Early College, Thelma Salinas, or HSP, and you want to continue with Jimmy Carter Early College and you're a 10th or 11th grader, we are honoring our commitment to the pathway you've chosen, and you will be able to finish that. The other thing, Chief Gomez-Perez mentioned this, but we want to go a little bit deeper into it. We are not proposing any other changes at our comprehensive high schools for next year. So what they currently offer is what they will continue to offer into next school year. So Juarez and Palmview will still have their P-TECH program. La Jolla currently offers dual credit coursework. It would continue to do that as well. On the CTE side, despite the fact that we have lots of duplication, we're not proposing to change that next year either, as long as there's enough enrollment to justify those courses. So if you have enough students who want to take animal science, we will offer those animal science courses. Notice the right-hand part of this slide, though. As we think about 26, 27, we'll be considering all of this to make sure that we've got the right mix of opportunities across the district and can offer the best system of great schools that we are working to create and to nurture within La Jolla ISD. The other thing we want to call out for students and families, even if you're going to be part of Jimmy Carter Early College High School in the future, you will continue to have the athletic and arts opportunities that you do now. So if you want to go back and be a coyote at La Jolla on the football team or the mariachi or whatever that is, that will continue to be the case, and we will continue to provide the transportation to support you in that endeavor. We have quite a bit to do to engage with our community, including our school staff, and get ready for next school year if the board approves this recommendation. We would ask you to vote on this in January, so you see that sort of part of the board vote here. So you're not taking a vote on this tonight, but there will be school actions that we ask you to consider at the start of the new year. Leading up to that, we have conversations planned with our school leaders, with our teachers and staff, with our families and students, to make sure everybody understands sort of why we're making this recommendation, how we're going to support them through it, and what it means for the future of their experience. And then we've got work to do to actually build the infrastructure for next year. So finalize staffing, recruitment, enrollment, setting the master schedule, a bunch of important details that we have to do to make sure the school is ready to go in partnership with South Texas College. Like, they continue to be an integral part of this journey, and we are excited to have them as part of this to make sure that what we are doing is supportive of what they need on the college side, and that together we can support our students to have even greater success and more students actually finishing with an associate's degree. So thank you for your consideration of this. Chief Gomez-Perez and I are obviously happy to take questions.
Members of the board, do we have any questions for Dr. Little, Ms. Perez?
Dr. Little, I know that there's a lot of work that's going into all of this, so I appreciate that to begin with. But when I think about the pathways that are being consolidated, it also kind of begs the question around what efforts are being put to consider future high-impact pathways. So if you can tell us a little bit more about what type of partnerships and what we'll be looking into to decide, what future options could be for our students.
Yeah, there's a few components to that. First is continuing to look at workforce data in the region to make sure our CTE pathways really align to high-wage, high-demand opportunities. And then with STC, building opportunities to stack onto those CTE pathways to lead to associate degrees. So those 3 high-impact pathways that we're proposing right now, to your point, those may and should change over time as demand, need, and interest changes here locally in the region and with our students. The other part to this is what the superintendent has kicked off in the strategic planning conversations. As we listen to and learn from the community about what people are really interested in, what they want, that will also inform what we build in the future years as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Pena. Dr. Little, I have a question for you. It's obvious that dual credit is important to all school districts and it's affordable for all students. What are we doing to encourage more students to participate in such programs?
Yeah, this goes back to the mindset conversation that the superintendent really emphasized in the K2 presentation, and that threads to this question as well. We have to continue to show and to convince our students and our families that what's on the floor right there, educational excellence, is truly their right. Many of us spent today reading in classrooms as part of National Literacy Day, and I've gotten to hear a lot of the stories and excitement from our team who was in our classrooms, and a good colleague actually talked about how amazing our students are, and they truly are incredible. I've had the good pleasure of working in other places, and I will say that I am constantly surprised in the most beautiful and best way at the capacity and potential of La Jolla ISD students. Like, they will rise to the expectations that we set. As Chief Gomez-Perez mentioned earlier, like, a big part of the early college model is student support, but that starts with elementary students and middle school students, making sure that they know that they can dream that big and that there's a pathway and opportunity for them here. So that's a bit of a ethereal or esoteric answer to your question, but it's really an important part of what we're doing is to make sure people start to demand this of us because they believe it's what they should have and what they are owed in their educational journey.
President Alvarez, if I can also chime in on that, it's also about conversations that we've had about data that we've looked at in terms of intentionality, in terms of programming and scheduling. We know that we have students sitting in our seats right now that need different conversations around counseling and course selection. We know we have students who have the data that could go into these programs who aren't consulted and convinced in many respects that to say, like, yes, sweetheart, you can. And then the extra step of calling in the family and saying, Mom, here's the scores of your child and here are the opportunities that we have here in La Jolla ISD for your child. I heard repeatedly from parents last year, as I did my 30, 60, 90, that parents weren't even aware of the opportunities that we had and what was afforded here in the district. And so how are we, again, I go back to what can we do as the adults quicker, sooner, faster, to help bridge that gap between district and family? And what responsibility do we have to change adult behaviors so that student outcomes can change? And that happens when we build support systems integrated into our work. And so how are we using, say, for example, our parent engagement plan to really inform them about the amazing opportunities that we have in La Jolla ISD, especially when we have kids who have the scores and have the data early on to have the conversations to say, yes, you can.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. I mean, we have some of the finest institutions of higher ed within miles of where we're at today. I mean, STC has been a great partner to us, and we certainly want to take advantage of what they're offering. And of course, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Carlos Margo, who's a dean there, to assist us with that. But I do know that during the graduation ceremonies, we kind of look forward to seeing those students that are receiving those college degrees prior to their high school diplomas standing up. And like you said, Dr. Little, that gave us a lot of pride. And what we would like to see is more of those students, participate in such a program. So I appreciate the fact that you understand that it is a concern and that you'll be moving forward to increasing that number to you, and as well as you, Ms. Bettis. Thank you, Dr. Little. Okay, do you have any other questions?
I had a follow-up question on that, on what President Alvarez said about the dual credit classes. What are we doing as a district ensuring that these classes are up to par or have that rigor that is needed as a dual credit class?
Yeah, Chief Gomez Perez will give a better answer, but I would say we also have, a part of our partnership with STC, incredible requirements that our teachers in our classes have to meet.
So when we start looking at our staff that is going to be part of the dual staff, they go through a rigorous interview process. They have to fill out their application. And so once they get accepted or they get hired through STC to be associate instructors, then they have to go through a lot of professional development. And so they each attend with whatever area they're in. If it's the school of teaching or whatever it is, they attend that professional development. They have to go through extensive training, not just within the content, but also on how to use Blackboard, on degree works, on how to degree plans and everything, crosswalks that they have within. And then on top of that, they do have to follow their skeleton of their course that they have, and they're submitting everything through Blackboards that they're needing to do. And then to add a layer, just like we are doing walkthroughs with our teachers, STC deans or program chairs, they're coming in and doing walkthroughs within our college courses. And so there's a lot of not just support that South Texas College is providing for the teachers, but also expectations once they become instructors on how they are doing in the class with the walkthroughs, and then the visits with the program chairs at the college as well.
Right, that's good to hear, because I'm sure some of us who have attended, back in the day, right? We won't say how long ago, but these dual credit classes in school, sometimes some of them were not up to par, right, for a dual credit class, and it doesn't really prepare you for when you go to college. And so it's nice to know that there's those, instruments or those strategies there to help ensure that they are.
Yeah, I can say we've come a long way.
We weren't around when they didn't have dual credit, so
I wasn't.
you're lucky. Ms. Gomez-Perez, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Little. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item under agenda item 5, which is our Lone Star governance. This program, or this portion of our presentations, will be done by Dr. Sorensen and of course Diana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So this is a continuation of the discussion that we had at the last meeting. And so we're going to start with the board constraints, which I will invite our newly appointed Lone Star, our newly appointed conservator, former Lone Star governance coach. When we posted this, it says coach. But our new conservator, Diana, I invite you to go first and talk about the proposed board constraints.
Well, I just wanted to go through and just give the community a snippet of how we arrived at these. If you recall at the last meeting, we did some small group work and we arrived at, I believe, 7 or 8 values that we wanted to protect. That's what constraints are. Constraints are values that are important in the community that we want to protect and allow the board to be able to do their work better and allow the superintendent to be able to do her job as well. So after that board meeting, I drafted some of those constraints with those values. I had a conversation with Dr. Sorensen. We looked at those. We even had a conversation with another expert and had some wording fixed up. And what we came to were the proposed constraints that we bring before you tonight, which are the board members may not allow less than 50% of the total quarterly minutes in board-authorized public meetings to be spent on improving student outcomes according to the time use tracker. So it was very important for the trustees to make sure that we honor that we spend most of our time talking about student outcomes. As the Lone Star Governance District, it's important to our board that we focus on students and not the adult issues in the district. And I failed to mention also the last part of this was the board members go through board prep before the board meeting. So they get the packet, then there's a meeting with 3 of them at a time with Dr. Sorensen, her team, myself sometimes. And so all of the information that you're hearing tonight in the entire packet, they have an opportunity to ask questions. So before the board shows up at the meeting tonight, they've already read through the information on their own and then been through a board prep that lasts anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. So that was part of this, and so we were able to hone and get down to these constraints. The second one, the board shall not communicate in a way that goes or appears to go against any of the board or board actions. The value here that the board wanted to protect was that it was important for our board to be unified and to speak with one voice. And so that was why the board wanted to have this as a constraint. The last one was the board will not give operational advice or instructions to district personnel or district leadership. Again, this one was the value that they wanted to protect here was making sure that everyone knows that there are clear roles of the board and of the superintendent. And it's important to our board of managers to ensure that everybody know that they're going to stay clear and stay in their lane and do the things that they're supposed to do as a board, and then allow the superintendent to do her job as a superintendent and taking care of all the operational issues in the district.
Thank you. Thank you, Deanna. And then moving on to the next slide, the proposed superintendent constraints. After conversation and feedback from the Lone Star Governance coach and conversation in board prep, I narrowed down what I had presented to you last time to more clear and concise constraints for the superintendent, knowing that superintendent constraints also have progress measures. So this is just the first step in establishing the constraints. After we establish the constraints, then it is up to the superintendent to establish what are those progress measures in order to hold herself accountable for said constraints. So the constraints that I am proposing this evening is the superintendent shall not allow conditions that decrease student achievement. The superintendent shall not allow conditions that harm students with disabilities. And the superintendent shall not allow conditions that purposely compromise transparency and trust with the community. Again, lifting up the values of student achievement and student outcomes, lifting up our commitment to students with disabilities and our students in special education, and also holding up our commitment and our value to trust, transparency, and community engagement. Our next steps is we are going to ask for approval this evening. This is an action item. If it is approved, the superintendent will create constraint progress measures within the next 2 months, no later than the end of January. On those constraint progress measures, I will seek feedback from the board on those constraint progress measures, and then seek approval of the superintendent constraint progress measures at a subsequent board meeting, again, no later than the end of January. Any questions from the board?
Members of the board, do we have any questions for Dr. Barrera or Dr. Sorensen?
No.
Okay, we have no questions. Thank you, Diana. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda item. Before we proceed with the motion, I'd like to ask Philip, our attorney, for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's just one small correction on one of the consent agenda items. It's a small technical correction, but we need to make sure it's noted, so when you approve those items, you get it right. One of the items is approval of minutes, 6.3. Those are the minutes for the November 6th meeting. Those minutes for November 6th have an item 7.2, which was a contract that the board approved. The board correctly approved the contract in the amount of $499,300. But when that got put onto, some of you probably noticed it, onto the minutes for the meeting, a period that was a comma, so it looks like 499 million. And we just want to make sure that you're approving the correct, so you already approved the correct contract. It's not about that, but just want to make sure the minutes reflect that appropriately.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is that all, Philip, on the corrections? Great. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items with the noted changes that our attorney referenced?
I move to consider approval of the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Okay, our next agenda item is a closed session. The closed session will be held for purposes authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001, 551.07, correction, 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.129, and 551.0821 concerning any and all purposes permitted by the Act, including but not limited to the sections and purposes listed above. It is 7:28. We are now going into closed session. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back from closed session, and it is 9:16 p.m. Next item on the agenda is discussion under consideration item 9.1, approval of the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year to end June 30th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve 9.1.
9.1?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.2, consideration approval of Texas Evaluation of Support System, T-test. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve 9.2 T-test.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 9.3, consider approval of Lone Star Governance Goal Progress Measures. Do I have a motion?
I motion to approve 9.3.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9.4, consideration approval of Lone Star Governance Superintendent constraints. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the Lone Star Governance Superintendent constraints.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 9.5, approval of Lone Star Governance Board.
The Lone Star Superintendent constraints?
Yeah, okay, so correction. Next item is 9.5, approval of Lone Star Governance Board constraints. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.5.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consider action regarding Level 3 DGBA grievance filed by Raul Gonzalez. Do I have a motion?
I move that we determine that we have stopped, looked, and listened, and we take no further action on this matter.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 9.7. Let's see, consider and take action regarding the superintendent's recommendations for the proposed termination of term contract employee Leroy Garcia. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.7.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the calendar. So November 25th through the 29th, Thanksgiving break, there'll be no classes. December 4th, 2024, special called board meeting, student recognitions. December 5th, 2024, La Jolla ISD's 4th annual tree lighting ceremony. December 11th, 2024, regular board meeting. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 11. This is an opportunity for our superintendent to make any remarks.
Thank you, Board President. I just would like to conclude our board meeting with gratitude and thanks. We are about to head into the Thanksgiving holiday, and it is always an appropriate time for all of us to pause, breathe, take a little break, but also be very, very grateful and very, very thankful for all that we have and all that we have around us in terms of family and friends and each other. And it also is time for us to lift up those who need support and give to others who need giving. And so knowing the La Jolla ISD community, we're doing that, and we do it every single day. But I really want to wish all of our employees the very best Thanksgiving break. You earn it every day with your hard work and your passion and your love for our children, regardless of your role in the district. So relax, rejuvenate, restore, and just know that I have gratitude and thanks for each and every one of you. Enjoy your Thanksgiving break.
Do I have any other members of the board that would like to make the remarks regarding the coming Thanksgiving holiday? Okay.
I would just like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Have a wonderful time with friends and family. Enjoy the break.
Thank you, Dr. Carlos Margo. Before we adjourn, I do have a statement that I'd like to read. For the last couple of weeks, I have been informing the group of elected officials that were recently elected to positions here. We had a canvassing, but more, I wanted to share a story that was out in the paper that may have been a little misleading, and I wanted some clarification, and I did receive some remarks and something that we drafted up that I wanted to share with those that are not just here, but at those that are viewing. As a result of the placement of Dr. Diana Barrera as our TEA-appointed conservator, I would like to read a statement to our community employee and stakeholders so that there's clarity and understanding on the role of the conservator in the La Jolla ISD. I want to assure everyone that we as a board welcome the addition of Dr. Barrera to our team, as she has already been working with us since February of 2024. The elevation of her to this new role is welcome and expected by all of us, both the board of managers and our superintendent. On that note, it is a standard practice by the Texas Education Agency to appoint a conservator when a board of managers is installed. The board requested this placement in February, and Monday's announcement merely formalized this procedural action. All board of manager placements have a conservator. Houston ISD has 3, Marlin ISD has 1, Shepherd ISD has 1. This was expected appointment. There are no new issues in La Jolla ISD, and this is in no way an indication that the intervention is being elevated or that there is any concerns from the Texas Education Agency or the Board of Managers with the leadership of the district under Dr. Marcy Sorensen. Both the board and the Texas Education Agency has full faith in Dr. Sorensen's leadership of the district. To be clear, the conservator's role in the La Jolla ISD will be to serve as a force multiplier and support system for the superintendent, just like the roles that the conservator and other boards of managers and districts play. The conservator does not act as the superintendent's supervisor. Again, I want to stress that the conservator does not act as the superintendent's supervisor, nor does she direct grievances from the employees or stakeholders of the district. The Texas Education Agency has appointed Dr. Diana Barrera, who has served as a district Lone Star governance coach since the Board of Managers placement started back in February 2024. Dr. Barrera's conservator role will continue to support the growth and the development of the Board of Managers members and will also include supporting the transition of the Board of Trustees back onto the board only when it is indicated by the commissioner by providing individual governance coaching to trustees. This coaching will ensure they understand the role of the board member and the priorities set out by the superintendent and board of managers. Again, I'd like to stress, this coaching will ensure to understand the role of the board member and the priorities set out by the superintendent and the board of managers. The board of managers stands strong, and it is focused on improving student outcomes, supporting our employees, listening to our families, and engaging with stakeholders of this great community under the trusted leadership of Dr. Sorensen. If you would like to see a copy of this letter from the Texas Education Agency regarding the conservator's placement, feel free, and it is printed or posted on the board's website, on the La Jolla ISD website. With that said, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Diana Barrera, and we look forward to working with you, and welcome to the team. So, do we have any other comments from the board at this time? Seeing that we have none, Dr. Sorensen, again, thank you for the visits that been taking place with stakeholders. I know that you said you were going to meet with them, and I truly appreciate that you've invited us to attend. I also appreciate the fact that we had the Thanksgiving luncheon with staff of this great community and also with this great school district, and that was really nice of you to do that. And I was myself, Dr. Margo, and Celso, board members were very humbled, and we were very grateful to be a part of all that. So, with that said, if there are no further comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn this meeting at 9:26 p.m.
Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a safe evening and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.